Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're zooming in on one of the most iconic, charismatic, and visually striking seabirds on the planet. While they're instantly recognized by their colorful features, these little oceanic survivors live a hidden, fascinating life that goes way beyond their quirky appearance. We're exploring the true paradise of puffins.
Here's what we've got on the docket today. 1. Clowns of the sea. 2. Life on the ocean. 3. Breeding and nesting. 4. Threats to the paradise. 5. Protecting sea parrots. And we'll wrap it all up with a rapid-fire puffin FAQ. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Clowns of the Sea. Time to decode that famous look.
Now, it's pretty easy to see why people affectionately call them sea parrots, right? But here is a wild fact. That vibrant, striking beak, it's actually a temporary display. Yeah, that bright orange, yellow, and red outer layer is grown specifically just for the spring breeding season to help them attract a mate. Once winter rolls around, they literally shed this colorful outer plate, leaving them with a much smaller, duller beak to weather out the cold months. You know, they've been playfully described as tiny seabirds dressed like overworked goth clowns. And honestly, it kind of hits the nail on the head. They're a bit teetering and clumsy on land, standing only about 10 inches tall, and get this, they weigh little more than a can of soda. But that bold black and white plumage gives them this sharp, tuxedoed look that perfectly contrasts those really expressive triangular eyes.
Moving on to Section 2, Life on the Ocean. Let's uncover their hidden oceanic lives.
So, as clumsy as they might look waddling around on the rocks, the second they hit the water, it's a total transformation. Puffins don't just swim, they actually fly underwater. By tucking their wings in for powerful propulsion and using their webbed feet like a rudder, they can dive down a staggering 200 feet deep in search of small fish. It's really incredible to picture.
And they aren't just fast below the surface. Up in the air, they are incredibly swift. When a puffin launches off a wave, it takes this really direct, low-altitude flight path right over the water's surface, and they can reach remarkable speeds of up to 55 miles per hour.
But, you know, that kind of speed definitely comes at a cost. Because their wings have adapted to be small and compact for deep-sea diving, they really lack the broad surface area needed to just effortlessly glide. So, to maintain that 55-mile-per-hour speed, they have to frantically flap their wings. We're talking up to 400 times a minute just to stay airborne.
Section 3. Breeding and nesting. The grand return to the cliffs.
Once spring arrives, these normally solitary ocean wanderers finally head back to land. And suddenly, they become incredibly social. They reunite with their lifelong mates, which is just super sweet, and they use those strong bills and webbed feet to dig deep burrows right into the turf. Sometimes they'll nestle into rocky crevices instead, lining their little homes with grass and feathers to safely lay just a single dull white egg. And once that egg hatches, both parents work absolutely tirelessly to feed their newly hatched puffling. Yes, that is the real, highly endearing term for a baby puffin chick. To keep up with a very hungry chick, an adult puffin can carry up to 20 slippery fish at once. They manage this mind-boggling feat using these specialized, backward-pointing spines on the roof of their mouth and tongue. It basically lets them hold a whole row of fish crosswise in their beak, while they open it underwater to catch even more. It's a real game-changer for them.
Section 4. Threats to the paradise. Taking a look at a very delicate life cycle. Now, despite their numbers actually being in the millions, rapid population declines have unfortunately led to the Atlantic puffin being globally listed as a vulnerable species. Warming sea temperatures from climate change are shifting their absolutely crucial food supplies further north or into deeper waters where they just can't reach them. On land, invasive mammals like rats and mink devastate their nesting colonies. And out at sea, oil spills and marine plastic pollution are actively destroying their natural habitats.
Section 5. Protecting sea parrots. But wait, thankfully, there is definitely hope. Incredible conservation initiatives like Audubon's Project Puffin over in Maine have successfully used decoys and mirrors to trick these highly social birds into returning to abandoned islands. And it worked. They've successfully reestablished over 1,000 breeding pairs. It's just a fantastic success story.
Section 6. Puffin FAQ. Time to consolidate all this with some rapid-fire answers.
Let's kick off with our first question. Is the Atlantic puffin the only one of its kind out there, or is there a wider puffin family? Well, there are actually 3 distinct living species. The Atlantic puffin is the only one found in the Atlantic Ocean, but over in the North Pacific, you'll find the horned puffin and the tufted puffin. And that tufted variety features these incredible, long, pale yellow head tufts during the breeding season. They look absolutely wild.
Next question. How on earth do they survive 8 continuous months out on the open ocean without any access to a fresh water source?
It all comes down to supreme marine adaptation. They are actually perfectly equipped to drink salt water. They have these specialized glands that process the salt, allowing them to rest, eat, and stay fully hydrated entirely out there on the open ocean waves. Nature really thought of everything.
Moving right along, what collective noun do we use for these quirky birds when they finally congregate on land?
In a way that perfectly fits their clowns of the sea nickname, a group of them hanging out on land is literally called a circus. How great is that? And by the way, while they are totally silent at sea, a circus of puffins on land is surprisingly noisy. They make these deep growling sounds from inside their burrows that honestly sound a little bit like a chainsaw.
Finally, what is the natural lifespan of these resilient little oceanic survivors, assuming they can dodge predators and find enough food?
Despite their tiny size and the whole multitude of environmental threats they face, they're actually surprisingly long-lived. Because they typically don't start breeding until they're about 5 years old, nature has granted them a remarkably long lifespan of 20 to 30 years to make sure they can raise enough pufflings to sustain their population.
Which brings us to one final, absolutely vital question. Will we step up to protect our oceans so these clowns of the sea can continue to thrive on our shores? From mitigating climate change to supporting sustainable fisheries, the survival of these resilient little birds is directly tied to the choices we're making right now, today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your curiosity soaring.